Hello, good morning, viewer. Thank you for coming back to my channel, Hocantalk. Now, today this video is a continuation of my previous video regarding ASEAN. Yes, remember in my previous video, I talked about ASEAN. I give you a comprehensive or a very complete overview about ASEAN, how ASEAN is being created, when it was created, who are the founding members, the structure and management, etc. And the reason why I produced that video is to give you a basic understanding of ASEAN. Okay, now this video, I'm going to continue as a part 2 of the previous video, and I will continue to explore further in the situation, in the scenario whereby if oil price or oil prices reach $200 per barrel, can ASEAN cope, or what can ASEAN do to counter-react to this situation? So thank you for coming back to this video, and if you like my video, do subscribe. If you look at the first slide now, let's zoom in into the possibility what ASEAN can do to counter-react when oil price reaches $200 per barrel. This is just an example. So we just want to see, if oil prices really reach $200, what could ASEAN do? Now, if you look at the slide that I produced, now I actually produce the answer here. It's small print, but I will just explain to you. The legal correct answer is that if oil prices really shoot up to $200, there is no legal requirement among ASEAN members country to help out each other. There's no legal requirement. In the ASEAN chapter, there is no obligation for any of the member country to help the other member country if the oil crisis happen to hit one country badly. There's no legal obligation. But the charter of the ASEAN agreement does have two measures to help other country when this thing happen. So legally, there's no legal obligation for them to help each other, but there are two measures, two agreement that they built into the whole arrangement of the ASEAN association, so that when this thing happen, then that two agreement can be triggered off, that it will be certain help to some country. And again, I want to stress, it's not a legal obligation, it's on a principle. It's a principle, but it's not a legal obligation. Now, so what are the two measures that the ASEAN Charter actually has agreed on, or among all the members country? Now, there are two. So I will mention these two measures one by one. The first one is called the ASEAN Petroleum Security Agreement. So there are two measures. So now the first one is called the ASEAN Petroleum Security Agreement. In short, it's called APSA. Now, if oil price hit $200, then that under APSA, there is something called the Coordinated Emergency Response Measure. In short, it's called CERM. What does this mean? So if a member of the ASEAN country face 10% shortages in oil or in energy or food supply for a consecutive 30 days, and then they can trigger off that they are facing this emergency. So when this happens, they can send notice to all the rest of the ASEAN member, and the rest of the member country under this agreement will put in their best effort. It's not a legal obligation, it's not a must thing, but it's based on their best effort basis, that they will collectively help to fulfill this 10% gap of the member country that is being affected by surge in oil prices. So again, there's no legal obligation, but the charter or the agreement under CERM, Coordinated Emergency Response Measure, require the rest of the other member to put in best effort to help the member country who is suffering from oil crisis, like shortages in oil supply. They don't have enough. But this measure is only to safeguard the supply of the oil to that country, but it does not safeguard the price. Let me put it this way. So for example, this arrangement is not a gift or a rescue package from other ASEAN member to the member country that are facing oil shortages because of the oil price increases. So they will just supply to this country on the best effort, but the price that they charge this country will be the current market price. So even if the oil price go to $200, and if this one of the member country asks for help, the rest of the member country chip in to help out, they will still charge that member country $200 per barrel of oil. So this measure, called the ASEAN Petroleum Security Agreement, is an arrangement to, on the best effort, to help the rest, to help the member country that's asked for help, but it only settle the supply issue 10%, a gap of 10%, but the price will be market price. What about the other measure? In case the oil price went reach $200, some member country will be in financial difficulty. For example, not enough foreign reserve to buy the oil, because oil is quoted in US dollar, the petrodollar. So what happens is some country within the ASEAN do not have the money to pay. There's something very unique. I'm very sure a lot of people don't know about this thing. It's called the Asian IMF. IMF stands for International Monetary Fund. Now, during the Asian financial crisis, I think in 1997, some country, because of currency peg to the US dollar, like Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia, they faced with property resulted in a currency crisis resulted from property crisis. So they have a currency crisis, and after they depeg their money with US dollar, all their currency suddenly dropped. And this country actually fell into very difficult financial situation, and International Monetary Fund got to come in and rescue them. So they give them some money, they lend them some money, but they require all this country to follow certain rules. At that time, a lot of the Asian countries think that the measure required or the rules required by IMF is too harsh, not relevant to the Asian reality. So they ignore how the Asian country operate. And also IMF and World Bank are mainly funded by the West. So when this international organization come and rescue, they impose very stringent kind of measure, and there were a lot of hardship. So because of that, a few countries, the ASEAN and 3 countries, namely China, Japan, and South Korea, actually they got into a meeting, and they created something called the Chiang Mai Initiative Multilateralization. In short, it's called CMIM. Yes, this is a measure. Now, what is this about? Now, this is something that they actually created a standby fund of 240 billion US dollar to make sure that in case any of the ASEAN 10 members country got themselves into trouble, then they can draw down on this amount of money and help their local economy instead of begging IMF and World Bank. So there is this initiative being done. It's called the CMIM. I'm very sure a lot of people are not aware about this CMIM. Now, CMIM, how does it work? Meaning that if a certain ASEAN member country need financial assistance, they can create this request, and all the members plus the 3 countries that willing to participate in this CMIM, namely China, South Korea, and Japan, all these people, the finance minister and the central banker, they got to vote. If all say okay, then the country that need help will be given a sum of money as a loan or financing assistance packages. So they don't have to go and talk to IMF or World Bank. So that's the reason why CMIM is called the Asia version of IMF. Yes. So to summarize, there are two measures inside the Charter of ASEAN. One is the Petroleum Security Agreement for the 10% gap supply. The other one will be the CMIM. Now, you might ask me, why China, Japan, and South Korea willing to involve in this this initiation? You see, because of the 1997 Asian financial crisis, the collapse of the Southeast Asian market actually affected the export market of China, South Korea, and Japan. Because ASEAN is one of the targeting country that they sell their electronics product, their car product, and all kind of product from these three big countries. So because they view that what IMF has done to the Asian country at that time was not appropriate, and they think that they must get involved in the regional affair to make sure that their exporting market are protected. That's the reason why they are agreeable to participate in the CMIM program. The CMIM program in total is 240 billion. Yes, that's the amount. And I want to show you, out of the ASEAN 10 country plus the 3 additional country, who contributed how much. I'm quite sure a lot when you do your work or when you read some article, you always can see that a lot of research report put out there ASEAN plus 3. You can see a lot of reports put out there ASEAN plus 3 economic review, ASEAN plus 3 economic outlook, blah blah blah. Now, actually, this report is produced by an office in Singapore. Yes, later I will give you more hint about that. Now, let's come back to how much of this out of the 240 billion, how much come from those ASEAN country and how much come from the 3 additional countries that are willing to step in and help. Now, if you look at this chart, in total, out of the 240 billion, China contribute 32% of that amount. And Japan, likewise, also 32%. Now, China, in this case, include Hong Kong. So both China and Japan, they put in 32%. Now, that's a reason why China and Japan agreed to do it same percentage, because they don't want one party to over-influence this arrangement. That's why China is 32%, Japan is 32%. Now, South Korea put in 16%, which is about 40 billion US, 16%. And all the ASEAN country all together put in 48 billion or 20%. So altogether, there are 240 billion US dollars standby line to help any of the ASEAN country. This money cannot use to help China, South Korea, and Japan, only for the ASEAN members. Now you know there are two measures, the Petroleum Security Agreement and the CMIM. I will zoom in further to the CMIM. Now, maybe some of you would think that, wow, there's a 240 billion cash sitting in the Jakarta office bank account for someone to manage it, for those people who work in that office to manage the 240 billion. The answer is no. Now, even though there's a CMIM program, the money is on a on-call basis, standby. So all this money, the central bank of all these countries, the ASEAN plus the 3 countries, they put a standby line, meaning they are willing to commit up to this amount. It doesn't mean that they already come out with this amount. Okay. Now, so who is the manager of all this arrangement? Since there's no money to be managed, right? But there must be someone who monitor the economic performances of all the ASEAN country, and so that people, when in trouble, can tap into this fund. So the office is located in Singapore. The ASEAN Secretary General Office is located in Jakarta. Okay, and then each country will nominate an ambassador to be there working full-time in the Jakarta office. But how about for this CMIM initiative, the office that look after or review the economic performances of all these countries is operating from Singapore office. The Singapore office that is called the ASEAN plus 3 Microeconomic Research Office, and it's based in Singapore. So I'm quite sure you can just Google, you can find the address. So the personnel that work in this AMRO office in Singapore will be the one that keep monitoring. They got no money to manage. They're monitoring the economic performance of all this country. And if any of the country go into difficulty, they will review it to authenticate it to make sure, yes, they are actually in difficulty. Then they will put out the request. They will activate this CMIM. Then all the relevant finance minister will vote whether to give money, to lend money to that particular member who seek help. Okay, so this slide summarizes everything about CNIM. So you can cut and paste in case you need all this for your work-related purposes. Now, some viewer might say, hey, why 240 billion? Why not 100 billion? Okay, this is a good question. Now, when this thing started, the CMIM started, it was set at 120 billion, yes, US dollar. But because of the euro-dollar crisis, all the finance minister in Asia, in ASEAN and China, Japan, and South Korea see the drastic damage or the impact of the EU euro-dollar crisis. So they come to a meeting and they agree that they will increase it or double it to 240 billion. Yeah. Can this number be changed? The answer is yes. All the finance minister can meet together and they can change it. And regarding the size and all this, so it's not something that is cast in stone. They can change it if everybody agree. So now you know that in case the oil price reach $200, there are two measures within ASEAN arrangement that can safeguard their member country. One will be the Security Act that will provide 10% shortfall of oil supply in terms of volume, but not in terms of pricing discount to any of the member who suffer these shortages in oil related kind of energy. Number two will be the CMIM that will give money to a member country to help them to revitalize their economy. So the last question, coming to the last part of this video, viewer will definitely ask, what are the benefits for China, Japan, and South Korea to be involved in this CMIM? Yes, so I will just summarize as the benefit here. Again, the money is not a free money, it has to be returned, it's a kind of loan. But anyway, there must be some benefit for China, Japan, and South Korea. The one thing, the most important benefit is the market stability, which I put down here. They do not want any disruption in ASEAN because ASEAN represents a very big export market for these three countries. So that's the reason why they are willing to participate in CMIM to ensure ASEAN is stabilized. It's a very stable, it's a group of stabilized economy that can continue to absorb their export product. Number two, they also want to make sure that this region, ASEAN region, is not 100% dependent on Western influence or Western source of funding. They want to have some say, some influence in this part of the world. That's the reason why they are willing to participate in CMIM. Now, the third one, of course, for some of these big countries like China and Japan, they also have the intention, or maybe they also want their local currency to be more actively used in international trade and then reduce the dependence on US dollar. So this is something like de-dollarization, which happened many years ago. So again, all these countries, they participate in this CMIM. It's not a gift, but it's a loan, but they're willing to do so because they also benefit from a very stable and prosperous ASEAN. So okay, now we are coming to the end of this video, which is considered a part 2 of the overall video. The part 1, I give an overview on ASEAN. Part 2, I painted a picture that if the oil price reaches $200, what can ASEAN do? Okay, or whether can ASEAN cope. So I hope from these two videos you know the answer, and I hope that my content of these two videos can help in your daily career or your business decision. Okay, thank you very much. Do subscribe to my video or circulate my video and circulate my video to all your friends so that I can get more subscription. Thank you very much. See you next video. Bye bye.